you got these different branches in Media 22.
Right.
I'm curious about like how that happened, and I'm also curious about because I know you are a family man as well. You have a beautiful family. How do you balance that? Like, are there
Mm.
any tips that you would tell people like who have the entrepreneurial spirit and have the drive and the motivation, internally to do these different things and build up these companies and brands?
Right.
Are there any tips that you could give them, like on how to, balance that out the best way that you can? Because
Right.
it's never going to be all the way one way,
Right.
especially if you're trying to build something, like you're doing. So I guess kind of a two-part question.
Right. So let me address the first one with the balance, and the second one was, so I can keep that in the back of my head. The second question.
I think I asked you about like the different, like how are you
The
managing
different
the different,
branches.
the different branches and the different
Word.
brands within your the main business, the top one.
That's what's up. All right. So this is something I would say to all my artists back in the Deuce days. I would say, if your home ain't right, then this ain't going to be right. If you ain't handling what's going on at home, you for sure can't show up and do this, because those things are always going to be pulling at you. And we had some interesting things occur sometimes on the road when things ain't handled at home, where people pop up and disrupt shows or pull you by the ear before you're about to go on stage and things of that sort, because something isn't right.
Right.
To build anything and really to really invest time into something outside of what may be your normal 9 to 5, your partner in crime, whoever that is essential, meaning that they have to be able to allow you to have the time to be you, and to grow and explore where it is you're trying to go. Because many times in entrepreneurship, we know it's not a straight line. So it's not like I'm trying to do this and then you're just allowing me to do this. No, sometimes you're going way around the bend and you're coming back to it, but that's just not the direction. And if you don't have somebody that's with you that has an understanding of that, how important that is to you, and is willing to give you the space and the growth to be able to make the mistakes, because mistakes will happen, it's just not going to come together for you. There's been a lot of artists that I've talked to. I'm like, you may love this, but your situation is not allowing you to do this.
Yeah.
So you have to rectify this in some way, saying that, I'm dead in that situation and I'm going to follow this, or you're right, I got to remove myself from here and be into this situation. Personally, I've been blessed to have a wife that has been able to give me the space, to trip and fall on my face, to be honest. And I say that because it has not been smooth, to say the least, just to put it lightly. We always talk about this in some of our podcasts. We see what it looks like online, but, but behind the scenes, it's this scraped up face. I got blood coming from the knees. It's all these other things that you're just not seeing. Because that's not what people want to necessarily present. But you have to have somebody that is willing to give you the space. You bring in 2 boys. I have 2 boys. Makes it even more complex, because now you're looking at trying to divide time in essence.
Yeah.
If you have a partner that's working, and then you're working and you're doing an entrepreneur, you're doing your own business, and you have kids now.
Yeah.
Those schedules are bonkers. Those schedules are crazy.
And kids ain't trying to hear that. Kids
not at all.
Ain't trying to hear it. They like, look, I don't care what you got going on. I don't care.
They ain't trying to hear that. And the second thing is that, well, what is that unintended impact?
Right.
Now, I'll take my own experience with my relationship with my dad. My dad was always on the road. He was always, if he's flying to here, flying to here, flying to there, flying to there. So there's moments that I'm like, yo, this is my come up. I'm like, where you at? And those are those negative impacts of And as I get older, I'm like, the stuff you was doing, like you was in the lion's den.
Yeah.
And to keep your head on a swivel in the spaces that you were, and a lot of those spaces where you're the only that is like you, especially at that time, 80s. I saw an article where bro had the afro too. I'm like, oh, you was really that.
He was black in the 80s.
No, you didn't show up in the paper in Maine and you got the afro. I'm like, oh, I'm like, that's a target. But there's those like I said, those impacts. So you also have to take into account your family and what you want to leave them, I guess, and I guess for lack of a better term, and the impact that you want to make. Like, I think about that. The hardest thing I think about is not getting caught up in being as busy as my pops was, and missing the moments that I wish he was there for. I don't want that to happen to my two boys. So figuring out that balance and cutting out the time, the strategy, the best strategy to do that, that we've been using is really a phone. Me and my wife will sit down and just map out the month and put it in the calendar. Simple things as who's taking them to the doctor, or the dog has to go to the vet, or I'm out of town for this conference. It's not going to work as, oh, by the way.
Right.
It's just not fair to really either party to have that continue to pop up, and it erodes the relationship. So as far out as you can to get ahead of some of these things would make things easier. Now, is that a perfect blueprint? No, but it's a blueprint that has worked, I think, to work for us. And, I think it allows us to now look ahead and say, okay, yeah, I'm pushing 60, 70 hours this week. How do I now balance that out into the next week and say, hey, well, maybe I'm not going in Monday, or maybe I'm going in Tuesday late because I want to spend time with the family, or I want to make sure I'm at the track meet, for my oldest, and things of that sort. So if you can work with your partner and however you can to really put those things down and commit to those things in a calendar-like format, it just gives you a little bit more perspective of where your time is being spent and where it's not being spent. And then you can pivot.